Hi, everybody. Welcome to All-Star Insights, all things youth baseball. I'm your co-host, Chris McKnight, along with my co-host,
Coach Rock.
How's it going today, Coach Rock?
Going pretty well. How you doing today, Chris?
Good, good. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. And today we have a really special guest, Pete Caliendo. Pete was a former USA national team coach. He's had the pleasure of traveling the globe to over 55 countries, spreading the great game of baseball. I've known Pete for a while. We worked together back in the early 2000s when he was the director, USA Baseball up in Wisconsin and a couple of other states around there. And he's been involved in baseball his whole life. A lot of great articles that he's written. He's written a couple of books. He's got some DVDs out. So we're going to have a great conversation with him today. And welcome, Pete. Thanks for joining
Chris
us
and
today.
Rock. Look forward to it, man. You guys are rocking and rolling. That's what you are.
There we go.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
I know the really cool story when you started, coaching at Mickey Owen Baseball School and then progressing from there. But just give us a little background and then how you got, into the traveling piece going around the world teaching
Sure, and
baseball.
also thanks, guys, for having me on. It's a great honor. I know you have a lot of people to pick from in the U.S. and around the world, so I really appreciate it. It all basically started when I was young. I saw a Baseball Digest article, which for some listeners, they may not know what Baseball Digest was. It's an old baseball magazine, and they had publicity, and one of them was what you mentioned was Mickey Owen Baseball School. As an average to below average player, I wanted to get better. So I asked my parents, being from Italy, didn't know much about baseball. I said, I'd really like to go to a baseball school to get better. And, funding wasn't always there, but whatever my parents could do, if they saw a passion in me, they would do their best to allow me to do it. And I went to Mickey Owen Baseball School. It all started there. It started as a student, counselor, and evolved into assistant coaching at a young age, 17, where you're working with the 5s to 12-year-olds. And then it got into the director position where you're now heading up certain programs, had great mentors there because I was always there with older guys. And then next, everything just snowballed from there. And then it went all the way to what you talked about, Chris, international travel. My first trip internationally, folks, you may not know this. I'm not sure many people did this. At 3 years old, my parents sent me to Rome to live with my grandparents. And no, they did not go with me. And no, I was not traveling by myself, but I did have a flight attendant next to me the whole trip. And I lived there for 3 to 4 years. My first language, Italian. That helped me evolve around the world also because it helped me with Spanish and other languages. And it just, snowballed from there, guys. And it was just with luck, hard work, great mentors. I got to do so much in the game. Now it's been over 4 decades, and it's hard to believe because, just don't know where life is going to take you. And it just took me in a way where I got to see the world because of baseball.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
Awesome. Hey, Pete, how do you approach team culture and leadership within team dynamics?
That's a great question. I'll tell you why, because I know we focus a lot on fundamentals, and fundamentals, folks, are important. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you need to work on the fundamentals, but that culture aspect and how you create that is so critical because I've worked with a lot of European players, and sometimes I'll give you the hardest part of it. A lot of times I may only have players for 2 weeks or 1 week. And you got to gain that respect and you got to develop that culture, whether it's in the clubhouse or whether it's on the field. And I think you involve the players in that. I think we fail sometimes. We try to set the culture only ourselves. But I tend to ask the players a lot of questions, what they're looking for, what they'd like to have in the clubhouse. Try to get their feedback on what kind of, what rules they might want to have. Ultimately, yes, I'm going to make that final decision. We're going to have certain rules set up. But the culture really, to me, comes down to like anything else. You look at an Italian family, and I'm sure there's a lot of families like this. It's about caring. It's about caring about your players. It's about players caring about, if the players think you really care about them, and they know that you care about them, they're going to transfer that to the other players also. So they're going to care about their teammates, their people they're working with. Also, you build a culture by respect to the game. I think we're getting away from that a little bit. I had a rule I never swore as a coach. Now, I know a lot of coaches are going to, disagree with me possibly, but especially younger players, I never used profanity. If I did, I apologized. Sure, in pro ball, we tend to use it a little bit more, but that's, internally. And it happens, but sometimes you get mad. But that's one thing. I also asked, when a coach was talking, I wanted the sunglasses off. I always see a lot of people wearing their sunglasses. I want to be able to see your eyes. I think it's a sign of respect. I think the more we teach respect, the more we teach um, working with individuals are working together, the more we teach good manners, how to take care of your equipment, not to throw it around, how to respect the umpires, how to respect the other teammates. I'm not saying you can't try to win and be tough and play the game hard and all that, but respect the game to me and respect individuals is important. And that's how I approached it. If you read a lot of great leadership books, you'll see the famous book out of New Zealand with the I think the All Blacks, which is one of the top, um, uh, not football, but rugby teams in the world. One of their leadership roles is that their seniors, their top players are the ones who clean their clubhouse, are the ones who clean their dugout. It's not the freshmen. It's not the young kids. Hey, you go do it because you're a freshman. No, it's leadership. It's the leaders that show what you do. And that's another thing I never believed in. Whether we were at a dugout of an opposing team or a clubhouse, we left that place spotless. If it showed up and it was dirty, we still cleaned it. And so we led by example. We led by leadership. Those are some of the things I think we used, and we never made excuses. It's not the umpire's fault. There's always a second chance. The umpire's there to do their job. The players are there to do their job. You make mistakes. He makes mistakes. I make mistakes. Discussing the important. Woo. It was that was my phone. I think it was listening to me. But you don't blame other people, for your faults. And there's always a second chance. And I think that's the way we approach things.
Yeah, no, that's good. Just touching on that, Peter, I know you've traveled extensively and you just got back from Japan, and Japan's culture for baseball, is respected worldwide. And one of the things I think that you hit on, about you always see the stuff about the Japanese players, about their practice and how regimented their practice is. But then after a game, one of the big things I'd always see that they'd be in the stadium helping clean the stadium after a game or cleaning the dugouts. Can you touch a little bit upon their practice routines and how it differs from
Sure,
the
and
United
and
States?
for your folks listening, it's coming from some experience too, because I've been there over 20 times. And I not only competed against them, but also trained with them. So I've been around Japanese baseball quite a bit, and I talk about it a lot because of what you just said: respect for the game, the training methods, how they deal with the game. They have a great passion for the game. They love the game. And then we talk about respect. There's nobody better that respects the game of baseball more than the Japanese. Now, there may be other countries that have the same respect, but there's nobody better. Um, and the thing about the Japanese, it's almost like a religion to them, and they set their culture. They're lucky from one aspect compared to us or anybody else, and that is at home, at the field, games, everything doesn't matter wherever you're at business. That starts at when you're born. That discipline starts early. It doesn't start when you're 14 or you're trying to develop it when you're 18 and your coaches are trying to instill it in you. And if you saw the Ichiro documentary, he treats his bat like it's royalty, right? It's in a case. He doesn't drop the bat on the ground. He puts it on the helmet, on an angle. They treat everything with respect when it comes to the game. And when it comes to their training, it's interesting because I brought teams there. My players look. We've gone to a high school training session, 60 players on the field, taking infield, outfield, one coach hitting the fungos, and it looks like a machine. I mean, it just, balls hit everywhere, just one coach hitting it. Balls aren't dropped. They're catching balls all the time. In about 20 minutes, you only see one or two balls dropped. And our players are looking at this and saying, well, how can that be? Well, it's not rocket science. And you guys know this more than anything. It depends on how much time you have to train. Oh, you want to put the time in? You could play catch just as good as they can. They don't have any special skills. They have the discipline. They have the culture aspect that Rock was talking about because they developed their culture extremely young and respecting the game and training hard. They also have respect for their coaches. They will not question a coach. That's the only difference in the U.S. I mean, obviously, we want players to ask questions, right? I mean, we don't want them to, have a major debate over it, but we want them to ask questions. We want them to be able to feel comfortable with the answer and why we're doing certain things. So we all understand that part. But in Japan, even me, when I went to speak at a coaching clinic in Japan, I'd say, any questions? Well, there are not any questions. Why? Because whoever's up there's the master, no matter what anybody says, and the master's right. And we follow everything the master does. So that's their type of culture. Well, same thing in training, right? I mean, so if we play catch for 20 minutes, they play catch for 40. If we take 100 ground balls, they take 200. Just to give an example, high school training, a lot of times, I've been to some high schools, they do sit-ups, prior to their workouts or even after their workouts. They'll do 400 of them. They don't do 398. They don't do 288. They don't cheat. They do 400, right? Their flexibility, their strength, second to none. We look at them and say, well, they're not very big. Yeah, but their thighs are twice the size as ours and their lower body strong and they're up. And a friend of mine in Canada did a physical evaluation of Japanese high school players and they rated way above ours in the US when it came to the physical strength, flexibility. I think that's another area that they're real strong in is flexibility. They're real flexible. They also train, they're educated. They do their homework. They check out the research. They check out developments in other parts of the world, but they stick to a philosophy. And that is, we're going to do it over and over and over till we get it right. And they don't have the mentality as much as, and I'm not saying this is wrong because we all teach it, right? We tell our players, hey, before the ball's hit to you, know what to do with it, right? If it's hit to my left, hit to my right, man on first, where do I go with the play? Well, they don't have to do that as much. Why? Because they practice that already. And they practice it 100 times, 1,000 times. I remember one time, and I'll end it with this, House, who spent a lot of times in Japan, as you know, one of the top, gurus in pitching, godfather of pitching. He told the, and I've done this too, because I wanted to do it myself. And he said to the Japanese young player, about 14 years old, you need to do the towel drill about 1,000 times, right? And to be able to change your motion and your movements. Tom thought, 1,000 times in a week. This kid went home and did it 1,000 times that night. And came back pretty good. That's the difference in mentality, right? I mean, they want to get better. Not say our players done it, but we're a little spoiled in the Western Hemisphere, and it's just the way it is right now. And I brought a Japanese team to train, American team to train in Japan. The first 20 minutes of warm-ups, they couldn't handle it. That's how good the Japanese up in their warm-ups are, and they're just way far behind us. And by the way, sorry, because I said I was going to finish. Japan, I want the folks to understand this because the Japanese compete with us worldwide. Senior World Championships, they lost the gold medal game 2-0 to the U.S. Softball in the Olympics, they beat the U.S. 2-1. They beat the American baseball team in the Olympics in Tokyo 2-0. I believe the score was 2-1, exact same score. World Baseball Classic, they've won it. They beat the U.S. also. Now, what's the difference is they have 1.5 million players possibly. The more research we do. We got 26 million amateur players. So there's the comparison. They're doing something right. Now, to the extreme, they go overboard a little bit. So let's not, let's be fair with all this. And they know it. That's why they have a high suicide rate. Baseball's pitch count system, I brought it to them and we were visiting in Tokyo a few years later. And I asked them, how's the pitch count program going? They said, oh, great. Now we're down to 500 a week. I'm thinking, wow, almost fell off my chair, but their bodies can handle it a little bit because of their training and their strength and their development. So that's your Japanese story right there, guys.
Appreciate that, Pete. What's the biggest mistake you see young players or coaches make?
I think, and again, I did a lot of long talking in Japan. I'm gonna keep this shorter so we can get to more questions. I think we make a mistake in two areas. We don't train players enough in the mental part of the game, and in dealing with failure. That was my problem. First of all, I had no skills, and then I couldn't deal with failure. Gee, I picked a great sport to play, right? Where you have to be mentally strong, and you got to be able to deal with the failure aspect. I think we don't train for that. We talk about it, but we don't train for it in practice, right? I mean, if we're practicing games or we're practicing drills, when we fail at a drill, we got to know how to deal with that, whether it's breathing exercises, whatever issues, that or areas that we're dealing with, and how to deal with the failure aspect. We need to train for that. The second part, the other part, I think we fail in, we forget how important the vision aspect is of training. And I say that because without vision, really good vision training, and I'm talking about having drills and in practice for vision, getting play. And yes, you check your eyes with a doctor, but
Yeah. No,
Yeah, thank you for that.
yeah, definitely agree with you. I mean, and it's funny you mentioned the vision training. I've been doing that for, I don't know, 27, 28 years. And this year we started at the facility with a reflection board. About it has a tracking component to it. It's got, swing or no swing component to it. And what the kids, number one, the kids love doing it because it's like a game. It's on the board. Well, yeah, it makes a huge difference in the ability to track and keep your head on the ball. And there's a lot of different training aids out there and different training stuff, but we overemphasize that because, like you said, if you can't see the ball, it doesn't really matter what your mechanical piece looks like on your swing. It's not going to help. You got the best mechanics. Yeah, no, 100%. So just building on that too, with the coaching, I know you travel all over, and that is that's your big piece, going to different countries and federations and talking about coaching. What do you think the U.S. baseball is lacking in terms of having a national coaching program? Is that something that you think would help with the coaching, and also just with some, like you talked about before, some parameters about how to deal with some of the issues you just spoke about?
I know, Peter. Well, I wanted to piggyback on that point really quick. We're really big into sitting on that bucket and calling pitches from the dugout, right? In reference to what we learned is that these players have a serious problem with location, right? And just they're not that skilled yet. They haven't had enough reps yet to pinpoint the baseball where it needs to be. So what I started doing as a coach was just letting them know zone five, just focus on zone five, right? That's the middle of the plate, right? And so based on that, we kind of let our catchers call their own pitches. And we found that the kids were more relaxed and they weren't as pressuring themselves to the point where they had to get the pitch right. They had to get the location right. And so the pitch counts we found were far better in their favor than in the batter's favor when we were in the field. What are your thoughts about that? We, yeah, we definitely.
Yeah.
One thing real quick that I've got to get out because this is really important. What do you say to that coach that tries to people please and tries to satisfy every parent on a team that thinks their kid should be out there 24/7?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you said, yeah, I think what you said earlier too about making things fun. We try to emphasize with our coaches at the end of every practice, and I don't care what they do, but something that ends practice on a high note, even if you were on them. Like last week, we had practice, and I guess, a couple of guys, we were having a throwing drill at the end. It wasn't great. So if I would have ended practice right there, they would have walked away like, coach is not happy with the end of practice. But, and I wasn't. But at the end, we do this thing where I give a bone, the dog of whoever was the dog of practice. And I give a huge, bone out to whoever is the dog of practice. And the kids look forward to it. They that's something that they look forward to at the end. And again, I make sure everybody, we point out what they did, or, make sure they have some. But I think if you end it with a fun drill or give something out like that, the chains are big. Look at the big leagues. One of the things that the Mets said, and again, I'm not saying this is the only reason they lost, but one of their guys said, that the OMG sign that Iglesias used to, do, he was like a leader in the clubhouse, and they didn't have that this year. They didn't have that little extra swag. And again, not saying that that contributed to their slump or their downfall, but even in the big leagues, you got to keep it fun. It's a game, and I think a lot of times parents and players just lose track of that it is a game. Yeah, it's serious, but you want to have fun, when you're playing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Pete, we really appreciate you taking some time out today. I know I could probably sit here with Coach Rock and, pepper you with like another hour worth of questions. No, hey,
No,
listen,
you're
this is
good.
great. I mean, this is really good info. And, we'll definitely have you back on again and dive a little bit more into some of the international topics and talk about a little bit more about the international players and some of the things you've seen too. But this is great points for our coaches, the young coaches that are listening, parents, and the players. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for jumping on with us today.
Thank you, Pete.